with Sean, everybody. This afternoon, I had the utmost pleasure of speaking with Miss Vanessa. Today, we're going to be discussing deconstructing Christianity. I want to thank you so much for joining, Vanessa. I really appreciate you for accepting my invite.
Absolutely. Thank you for reaching out.
Of course. Before I even go into ask my first question, I want to let you know how strong I think you are. Strong woman. And the reason I say that is because to be able to stand up in your truth and speak out about the church and religion, that's a big deal. I mean, I know you get a lot of slack for some of your views and points. So in my opinion, I think you're strong. I implore you to continue to do what you're doing because there are a lot of us that agree with what you're saying and we hear you and you are getting through to people.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
I'm a little bit shaky because I literally, before I got on, I got an email from somebody who's disgruntled, and the email was so disturbing to me. I might even read it to you in this interview to show y'all why I do the work I do. The things that she said was so disturbing. I'm trying to get myself together. So.
Yeah. I mean, you're human.
Yeah.
You're human, no matter how strong you are to get backlash. And it's to me, it's one thing to get backlash and another to be disrespected.
Yes.
Disrespectful with your viewpoint. Because I'm willing to hear it because we all have viewpoints. But let's talk to each other with respect because we're not always going to agree. So I would love to hear that. Were you raised in church? I'm assuming that you were, but were you raised in church?
Oh, absolutely. By a very beautiful God-fearing mother, God rest her soul. I was raised in a Baptist church. I wish I had stayed there. It probably would have been much safer for me. I was raised in the church by my mama. What I love about my mama is that she was not dogmatic about what she believed. So she didn't force religion down our throats as her children. She just, like most Black families in the South, she just spent a lot of time in church and she wanted her children to be there, but she didn't force it on us. And she was not threatening with her religion at all. But yes, I was raised in the church. I've been there all my life.
Right. I commend her for that because to allow you to have a choice, to not shove it down your throat, but introduce you to the teachings, I think it's good as a parent. And because it gives you something to believe in. And then and when we get of age, we start to think for ourselves and have our own thoughts. And that's what the church, in my opinion, kind of takes away from us. For us to have our own thoughts and opinions about things, they shove it down our throat.
and she never did that. She never did that. And for her, church was just really about community. It was about outreach. So she just taught us as her children just to love people. I remember as a small child just going with her to people's houses, feeding the hungry and taking care of the poor. So she introduced me to a very healthy spirituality. It was after I left my home church that all the trouble started.
Okay. You know what's funny? I was going to ask you that because I heard you mention in your introduction that you wish you would have stayed there and then you kept going. So I'm like, okay, where did that come from? Okay. So that's where that comes from. You wish you would have stayed planted with the seed that you were given in that particular church.
I do, with my mama, not necessarily the church in general, but the form of spirituality that my mama had, I could, at the core, if you move religion out of the way, that's who I am. I love helping people who are disadvantaged. I love helping people who are broken and hurting. So those are the aspects of religion that speak to my heart, which is probably why I got so caught up in it, because I enjoy doing those things. Even now that I'm not in the church, I still love those things. So if I could disassociate the teachings of religion and just keep that part, yes, that's the part that I wish I could just have stayed on that path and not become so caught up in the doctrine of it all. Does that make sense?
I completely understand that. I can understand it, and I agree. I honestly understand where you're coming from. So you were raised in a church. At what point did you say, you know what, I'm starting to question a little bit, or I'm feeling a little different about what I'm being taught? When did that come about?
So it's been in stages. I left the Baptist church when I was a young woman in my early 20s because I just felt like there was more. And so I left there and went into the Pentecostal church, like the non-denominational church.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you know this, but I also became a pastor myself.
No, I didn't know.
Um, so I started my own church in 2006. For 14 years, I pastored a church.
Okay.
So I think once I started reading the Bible for myself as a young woman is when the questions first started for me.
Okay.
Now, I didn't necessarily leave the faith at that point, but it's one thing to just go to church. It's a whole other thing to actually start reading the Bible for yourself.
True.
So I had a lot of questions about the things I read, but what I decided to do as a preacher was I was just going to preach on the parts that I understood and that made sense to me. And I just kind of tucked the rest of it away. Now,
I,
yeah, I did. And I, to be honest, I think that's what all Christians do. Now, all Christians might not want to admit that, but I think
there
that's
you
what we
go.
all do.
No.
We just don't want to tell nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of things in the Bible that don't make sense. There's a lot of things in the Bible that are actually very disturbing. And I think the people who read the Bible agree with that, but we can't say it out loud. We're not supposed to actually
Ooh.
say it out loud. I got in trouble because I said it out loud. So what happened was after a long time of pastoring, I just got very mentally burnt out from pastoring. I'm gonna just be honest. I got tired of pastoring, burnout. And so I closed my church.
Mhm.
My church was fully prepared for it. I took about 3 years to prepare my church for my closure. So when I closed the church in 2019, I still closed it as a believer.
Mhm.
I just closed it because I was tired of churching. When I went home and didn't have to go back to church anymore is when I had time to really start to examine my faith
Right.
up close, right? Something I hadn't really done before,
Exactly.
right? Which most people don't. I started taking every part of Christianity and I just began to dissect it, which is what we call deconstructing it. I took it apart, wanted to understand it. So I started to do all kind of research about the history of Christianity. Where did it come from?
Mm.
What were my people doing before Christianity? Right? What is the history of the Black church and the church in general? I started to think heavily about racism and how that affected my religion. I started to take more classes in psychology and neuroscience and all these things that help me understand how we as a people got indoctrinated. And so once I was no longer at the church, I began to deconstruct from Christianity to the point that I don't believe the things that I was taught and the things that I taught other people. Not because I don't believe in God. And this is something I want to make so clear on this interview because we've been so indoctrinated and programmed, people automatically assume that if I leave Christianity, I must be an atheist or I don't believe in God. That is not true, y'all. Okay, we had a fundamental belief in God before the colonizers introduced us to Christianity. So you can still keep God and deconstruct or leave the teachings of Christianity. I just want to make that clear.
I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you did that. Because that is the first thing, or one of the first things I'm pretty sure several people start to put in their own mind, not really listening to what you say. They instantly go to, she's no longer a believer in anything, you know.
Right.
So I do agree. And I think it's very important that you say that to let people know that's not what it is. That's not
That's
what
not
you're
what it
saying.
is.
Yeah.
As a woman of color, as an African
Right.
American, whatever y'all want to call it, Black, whatever we were,
Right. Right.
it's in our DNA to be spiritual.
It is.
I could not be spiritual if I wanted to. It's in my blood to be spiritual. But
Absolutely.
also what's in my blood through inheriting trauma is the doctrines that Christianity put there
Right.
that
Right.
disconnected me from my spirituality. It,
There
it
you
actually
go.
disconnected me from God, is what it actually did.
Oh, that's so damn deep. And I
Mm,
And I 100% agree with you, hence the fact that I wanted to get you on here, because when we go back into us as a people and our history, we're a spiritual people. That's what helped
Yeah.
us survive,
Yes.
that spirituality. But
Mm-hmm.
we were indoctrinated into
Mm-hmm.
Christianity
Mm-hmm.
by the same people that tortured and beat us, and then made
Absolutely.
us sit there and listen to their teachings. And we, that became a part of who we were. And
Yes.
they made us preach their way.
Absolutely.
There's stories about it, if people don't believe her or myself, where they would make you go and preach to the other slaves about how to stay obedient as a slave. So, I mean,
Absolutely.
we were indoctrinated. Now, I do, why do you feel that, I know you said that you becoming who you've evolved to today and still evolving, you still have a lot to do. You're doing it. So why did you become burnt out as a pastor? Like, what was the core of that?
That's a great question. And every day my answer to that question changes. People ask me this every day. I got burnout because that person that I told you about, that I was as a young woman, the woman that my mother raised me to be, those beliefs were not at the church as in general. Like, I have my thoughts about Jesus now, but let's go back to when I was a
Uh-huh.
Christian.
Okay.
When I was a Christian, I wanted to share the love of Christ to people.
Right.
Um, the problem is the Bible is broken up into what they call an Old Testament and a New Testament, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the Old Testament, you have this very angry God who does very disturbing things. And then you have all of a sudden in the New Testament this new version of God that's supposed to be, in person, personified in Jesus. Well, I like Jesus for the most part, right? So my ministry was about trying to empower people. I wanted people to be healed. I wanted people to take their faith seriously. I wanted people to take on the characteristics of their divine selves, which for me as a Christian, that would be found in the model of Jesus Christ.
Right.
And it just seemed like people were not interested in love and forgiveness and serving other people, because that's the kind of ministry that I wanted to have. I wanted us to serve the community. I wanted us to go into the community and feed people and care for people. And I wanted people to have, abundant lives. And so I was trying to teach people about, businesses, or how to, get an education, and just all these holistic things.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like people were not interested in self-empowerment. It seemed like people just did not want to be taught.
Right.
It seemed, and this was with leaders and lay people alike, it was just a lot of anger in the church, a lot of backbiting in the church, a lot of church hopping, a lot of people who just were disgruntled, people who were just easily offended at any little thing. And I could never really get people to buy into this notion of being what I called being born again, which is, let's take on the characteristics of being people of love. And so I felt like I was more of the problem solver. I felt like I was the babysitter
Right.
and not a pastor. And it just wore me out.
I can understand why.
So just trying to help people. And I'll be honest, I wasn't properly trained for pastoring. Most pastors are not.
Right.
Now, today I have a master's degree in pastoral counseling. I wish I had had that in my early years of pastoring.
Right.
So you have to remember, nobody trains people how to be pastors for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the Black church, because I'm gonna get in trouble. We
No,
get
you're not. Not on here.
we we get this idea of ministry and being ministers from slave masters. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
There's a book called The Making of a Negro Christian. I think everybody should read it.
Okay.
Not only that book, but I, as a doctoral student, I'm doing a lot of research because my dissertation is around mental health and religion in the Black church. And so when you look at our history as Black people, slave masters put this idea in us. They instilled this idea in us to be abusive to other people because they were. So we learned all of this sort of abusive, traumatizing faith from the slave masters. We inherited that mindset from our ancestors, because they were taught that. And so me trying to be that type of person caught up in this very toxic system of religion, it just wore me out.
I get it.
You know, having to constantly try to correct people, trying to constantly pray for people, trying to constantly counsel people, trying to fix people's problems constantly.
Right, right.
Right. So nobody really trains pastors on people management skills. Nobody trains us on mental health and how to identify when a person has mental health issues. So all we have is the Bible and our religious beliefs. We're trying to pastor people with just that.
Right, right.
And we don't have a full understanding of psychological
Oh,
needs. You know, people have psychological challenges, people have emotional challenges, people have relationship challenges, people have financial challenges. There's all these challenges. People have physical challenges, and they bring all of this to the church,
they do.
right? And we have pastors who are not educated on all these different disciplines, and we're trying to solve all these problems using theology
Yep.
only.
Only. Listen to what she said, y'all, because that's very deep. As she said, only. And
Only.
it requires so much more.
And it
And
requires so much more.
it
And I
does.
didn't have the more. So I burnt myself out.
Yep, I get it. If that is not understandable, then I don't know what people are listening to when you just said all of that, because that's completely understandable. And I 100% agree with what you said. And anybody that's awakened to what the truth is and what the real is, they know she's telling the truth about us as a people. And that does not mean that somebody's prejudiced or don't like any other races. We're speaking
No.
about our people.
Our history is, it
That's
is
it.
what it is.
It is
You
what it
know?
is. And you hit the nail on the damn head.
Now today, I could probably be a even better pastor because I have the tools today.
I know you can.
That now is when I should have been really just
Oh, yeah.
starting my ministry, to be honest.
Got you.
And I think if pastors would humble themselves and subdue that ego, most pastors would say, I relate to what she's saying. Most of us, and y'all, this is why we have 44,000 denominations, because historically, you
Right.
know what we've done, Sean? Historically, we have decided, I don't like this part of Christianity. I don't like that church. So I'm gonna go start my own ministry, my own movement. And this is how we ended up with these thousands of churches and thousands of belief systems and thousands of denominations, and it's confusion, right? And what it is that we wouldn't need all these denominations in all these churches if pastors would just understand it takes more than God, quote unquote,
Right.
to solve human problems.
Oh, man.
Because if all it took was God to solve human problems, with all these churches that we got in the world today, we wouldn't have no problems.
Nope.
So it only takes a minute of common sense for you to realize, wait a minute, we need more than just preaching about God to help solve human problems.
Oh,
And this is what is missing in our churches today.
it is.
We
You got
have
chill
people
bumps
who
running
are
up.
not trained.
You got chill
First of all,
bumps running up my arms.
we have people in the pulpit and in the churches who, first of all, are not trained in biblical hermeneutics.
Right.
So we're not even reading the Bible correctly. We haven't even done the research on the history of the Bible and how these scriptures came to be. That's the first problem. So we're preaching wrong. We're reading the Bible completely wrong. That's problem one. We refuse to bring things like mental health services and psychology into the church because we see that as evil and not God. So then we don't even understand human behavior and human development in the church, right? We won't bring in things like financial literacy. We won't talk about things like trauma. We won't talk about things like intergenerational traumas. So
Yeah,
all of these things are all up in the church.
they are.
But we have unqualified people. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that I was unqualified too. We have unqualified people on both ends who don't understand all these different disciplines and all these different variables. And so it becomes very toxic and very chaotic. And this is why the statistics are out there, y'all. Don't get mad at me. You can go pull up Pew Research and you can see the statistics, the latest data. People are leaving Christianity and the church by the thousands every single day.
Yeah.
Not because they want to go out and sin.
Nope. That's the first thing
The
they
devil
think.
has, not because the devil has taken their mind,
Right.
not because they don't believe in God.
Right.
People want to heal, y'all.
So true.
People have questions that the church will not or either cannot answer. And so folks are going off on their own trying to find answers and solutions.
Oh man. I
And
love it.
that is why I closed my church, because I knew something wasn't right. And I said, I went and prayed and I said, God, something that I'm doing is not right. There must be something that I don't know, Sean. I said it out loud in my house. I said, God, there's something that I don't know, because I've done everything I know to do.
Right.
And I'm not seeing lasting results. I'm seeing the same dysfunction in my church and in the churches around the country, because I was preaching everywhere. California, New York, Philadelphia. I've preached everywhere. Washington, D.C. I've preached in large churches. I've preached in storefront churches. I've preached among educated people. I've preached among uneducated people. It doesn't matter. It looks the same. So I said to God, there must be something that we in the Black church don't know. And I closed my church so that I could go find out what it was. And the first thing is, we have been removed from our indigenous spirituality. That's the first problem. And we have been programmed and conditioned, not just in religion, but in all of the major systems in our world today. Entertainment, media, politics, the financial industry, the health industry, the education industry, and the religious industry. All 7 of these major systems in our country have worked against all of us. And so I didn't realize that when I was in ministry, but I knew something was missing. And I went in search of what it was I didn't know. And now I have the fullness of what I didn't know in the church.
I love it. I love it. First and foremost, I love the fact of you acknowledging that. Not only acknowledging it, fixing it, finding these answers to these questions that I have. You didn't just stay in the church and fake the funk. You know, continue doing what you're doing, because you acknowledge these things, something's wrong. And for myself, I want answers so that now I can come out and really educate my people, because you were already doing that, but you're doing it on a higher level, on a conscious level now.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I commend you for that 100%. And don't you ever stop. So another question, and that, yes, you're welcome. So what does, when you let me go back to this. So how do you feel that, because I agree, but explain to everybody how you feel mental health plays a huge part in the church or religion.
Oh God. So here's the problem. And again, I'm talking about the Black church because that's the only church that I've been a part of, y'all. So this is not to shade the Black church. I just want y'all to hear me. I actually am an ally of the religion.
Let me stop you right there. I'm glad you said that. Before you go any further, I think that's very important. I like to catch key things. She's an ally. So she is Black. She's us. We're her. But there's no reason in faking or not being truthful about what it really is. And that's what she's doing. I'm sorry. You go ahead.
Thank you for saying that, because I am a Black woman. And like I just told y'all, my mama was in the church all her life. She died a God-fearing Christian woman. So I would never do anything to disrespect my ancestors at all. But I understand my ancestors they were forced, y'all, into the church.
Yes.
When I'm on, so this is what the research has revealed, that I'm talking about America. So again, a lot of people try to give me Ethiopia. I ain't talking about Ethiopia, y'all. I don't live in Ethiopia. I live in the United States of America.
There you go.
And in the United States of America, Black people were not attending church services prior to slavery.
Right.
Okay.
Listen.
Indigenous people, and that doesn't just include the natives, because there were Black people here too before the colonizers came. So all of us are indigenous people, and we were not going to any church services. Most of our ancestors was involved in nature worship. They worshiped out in nature. Okay, so the whole concept of the church is, we get that from the slave masters. Okay, and I think Sean alluded to that earlier. They're the ones that introduced us to church. Now, where does mental health come into play? Because our ancestors were so traumatized by the slave masters. You talk about the abuse that they endured, the lynchings, the rapings, the unalived, the murders, right? On a daily basis, y'all. Our ancestors working 16 hours a day in the fields, their children having to work in the fields. Most of our ancestors only getting 1 meal a day, and it was slop. Okay, not having proper clothing, not having proper physical care. So they went through a lot of mental trauma. Not once did they receive therapy. Not once did they get proper medical care. So they learned to suppress their emotional and mental illnesses. The reason that our Black ancestors began having their own church services, because they did. They used to sneak away behind the slave master's back, go down into the woods, and have their own worship experiences. That was their way of relieving the mental trauma. That was their way of receiving counseling. They counseled each other, and most of that was just through hollering and screaming.
Right.
That's why Black church, we have all that shouting that we do. That was our way of releasing the mental trauma.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
So as Black people, that is how we have embraced or approached mental health. Do y'all understand? We've approached mental health from this perspective because this is all we know.
Yep.
So even in today's modern church, the statistics will tell y'all, if you go look at the research, Black people we have the highest levels of mental health disorders in the country, but we're also the least demographic of people who will go and receive professional health care or mental health care. Why? Because we go to the church for our mental health care. Woo! Why do Black folks go to the church? Because our ancestors taught us to do it. Our ancestors taught us to shout it away, pray it away, praise it away, and serve it away. Our ancestors taught us to go to this church house.
That's right.
And let the preacher pray for us. Get counseling from the church mothers. We inherited this from our ancestors.
Oh, God.
And this is why we have so many Black folks who are undiagnosed.
Yes.
And we have been taught that it's a demon. Not depression, but that it's a demon.
Oh, man. Oh, God, you're so right.
So we have Black Americans who will, in fact, that's why I got that email today from that woman, because she got mad at me on TikTok because I was talking about mental health and demons. So we would much rather believe that we have a demon than for us to believe that maybe we have some kind of psychosis. Maybe this is depression. Maybe this is anxiety that I have. Maybe this is bipolarism. We don't want to hear that because our ancestors did not instill that in us.
Nope. You're so right.
So I'm avenging my ancestors, Sean. My ancestors say to me, listen, we had limited knowledge. Yes. Do y'all understand? Our ancestors had to fake the funk to preserve their lives.
Oh, man. Oh,
they had to hide their traumas behind their praise.
And we still live that same way.
And we're living that today. And so all I'm doing and all Sean is doing and people like us, we have been called by God to break this stigma off of the Black community.
Yes.
Our ancestors are crying out to us from the other side to break this stigma, to break this trauma off of our lives.
Oh, God. Yes.
Epigenetics, the science of epigenetics says that we can.
Yes.
How do we heal the trauma? By changing our environment, by changing our beliefs.
That's right. That's right.
By changing our consciousness.
Yes.
And if I don't speak out and tell people, you don't have to function this way anymore. You don't have to serve God this way anymore. You don't have to worship the way that your ancestors had to worship anymore. We can rise above this. If I don't open my mouth and say that, then my people continue on in the dysfunction and in the trauma.
They sure do. And
they'll continue to pass this on to their children and their children and their children, and we never get free.
We'll never be free if the work is not done. And that's why before I even started this conversation, I commended you from my heart, because I'm so what do you call it? I'm so, I can't even think of the word that I want to say, dedicated to teaching our people and helping us become better as a people, because it all starts with our ancestors. And as you said, I feel the same way. I would be doing my ancestors a disservice if I don't stand up and try to be that one to change things. And I don't care if it's one person. That's one person that can go change the next person.
That's right.
You know, and so eventually there'll be more of us.
That's right.
You know, so and that's I've dedicated the rest of my life to doing that.
Me too.
You know, because again, it's somebody got to stand up and fight against what we think is the right way. But now we know better, you do better. And we're spreading that, and you're not keeping it to yourself. You're going and helping our people. And again, I love you for that. So,
woo!
Yeah, you done got chills.
Or fighting back tears.
Okay, me too, because it's that deep though. And as she says, fighting back tears, and I say I was doing the same, because it's just that deep. When you know something and it speaks to you, you got to get it out. You know, yes. It hits that deep for me. They're fighting back tears. Explain to everybody holiness and hell. Explain the meanings of that.
I did a whole video about that on Facebook.
Oh, yeah. And I love, that's what makes me ask it. I love it.
Oh, you saw it?
I didn't. I'm a fan of yours.
So in a nutshell, holiness and hell. So first of all, the Bible never says that. It never uses that cliche. That is a church cliche. When you look at the word holy from a non-religious perspective, okay, the word simply talks about the sacredness within us. All of us are aspects of God. All of us come from, it's called emanation. All of us come from the divine. Okay. So in its holistic term, the word holiness means to be whole, to be made whole, to be sacred. The church wants that word holiness to allude to my dress code or the things that I do or don't do. Right. Whether I sin or not. That is a religious definition that has nothing to do with the wordiness, the etymology of the word. Okay. All of us who are created within the image and likeness of God would be holy. If that's not true, then God is not holy. Uh-oh. Because you can't say that you're created in the image and likeness of God and then call yourself anything other than holy. If God is holy and then you're created in the image of God, then that means you're holy too, which is to be complete, non-fragmented, to be non-broken. We're not broken. We're not fragmented. We may have experienced some things that have pulled us away from our holiness or our wholeness, but we, at the soul of our being, at the core of our being, we are whole. Hell simply is an allegory that has been grossly misinterpreted by religious leaders. When Yeshua used that, when Yeshua told that story in Matthew, because that's where most Christians want to get this idea of hell, that is not the word that was even used. Okay. and I wish I had more time. But hell, if you look at the etymology, and no matter how many times I say this, people just don't want to listen to me. Go look up the original etymology of the word hell. In the Greek, it is the word for Gehenna, which is a physical location
Okay.
that Jesus was speaking of. Jesus was talking about a physical place where people in the Old Testament used to go to this place to burn trash and also to unalive people.
Right.
So because Jesus taught in parables, you can't look at the literal things that Jesus say and take those words literally. Like, you have to understand Jesus' teachings are in parables. And Jesus says that several times in the New Testament or in the Gospels. I'm teaching in parables. And Jesus says in Matthew 13, he says, some of y'all have ears, but you don't have understanding, so you can't hear me.
Oh.
And that's what's wrong with the church. They don't understand parables. So hell was Jesus really talking to people about their own inner world and the need to do a lot of inner cleansing, to do a lot of inner work. These are states of mind, states of consciousnesses that exist within us, and that we have the power to overcome these hell states within us. So he's making this comparison between how these people who had low vibrational thinking would go and unalive people and go burn them in Gehenna. He was just trying to show people the mindsets that they too had, and that they had the power to overcome that low level of thinking, that low nature within all of us. All of us have like this low level nature within us. That's part of being human. But part of ascending in Christ, so to speak, is overcoming those tendencies to operate in low nature. We are holy.
Exactly.
So it's holiness, which is that high level of thinking, or hell, which is that low nature, that low level of thinking. Which one are you going to choose to operate in?
Oh man.
So there's a lot of allegory in the Bible, a lot of symbolism in the Bible that the church doesn't want to take the time to understand. All right, Jesus, these writings are thousands of years old. So there's cultural things that you have to understand if you're going to use the Bible.
There you
And
go.
the church doesn't want to take the time to understand ancient culture, to understand that these people talked differently in those days. Plus, I'm gonna end it. Plus, Sean, we have translation issues. The King James translation, the Church of England's translation of these writings are very, very, very confusing for us, because they have used a lot of what we call interpolations, which means a lot of things have been interjected into the Bible that were not originally there. When the Church of England hired these people, these 60-some men, to translate these scriptures, a lot of things were just added, all right, to fit the narrative of the Church of England.
Oh my God.
So a lot of these things were never in the original writings. And then the other part of that is, where did these writings come from originally? They came from ancient Kemet, or ancient Egypt. These are our ancestors' writings or stories. They never wrote these things down. They always told stories, oral tradition. And the colonizers, the Europeans, went into these territories and got a hold of a lot of these teachings and changed their meanings completely. So the meanings of all these concepts have been changed by the colonizers, by the Church of England. And they don't mean what they meant originally. This is why I try to tell Black people, y'all need to start reading like books like the Kabbalion. You need to start reading like, you need to start studying the hieroglyphics and learning how to understand symbolism, because you don't even understand what these words in the Bible really mean, because they're symbolic words, are not to be taken literally. So there is no place under the ground where folks are burning forever.
Oh, you gonna get it? I know you get it for that. You know, I know they give it to you for these.
Oh, I catch holy smoke for that.
I know you do.
Because we have been taught for hundreds of years that there is a burning hell fire under the ground. We've been taught this.
Yes.
And no matter how much I try, and I haven't really done a good job of explaining it today because I was caught off guard with that question. But
Oh, no, that was good.
but I want to tell your viewers, go to my Facebook page, Vanessa R. Brooks. There's a hour teaching on holiness and hell. Go to YouTube, Life After Church. There's a whole teaching on hell where I take my time and walk you through all the 13 times that the word hell is used in the Bible. And I try to explain to you what those words mean every time it's used, because it's going to take a comprehensive understanding of this word to change your consciousness about what it really means.
Yeah, it is. It is. It is. Especially for those that hold everything, like you said, in the Bible so literal, especially
Yes.
those, it's going to take a lot. So I implore everybody to go check it out. Not only that, check her out. So tell me, what made you decide to start to share your views and thoughts? I know, it's one thing to preach in the church because you reach a certain amount of people, but when you go to TikTok and Instagram and start sharing your views with the world, that's when it's deep. So what made you decide to share all of your education with the world?
Sean, this is who I am. I mean, I wish I had a deep answer. This is who I've been since I was a little girl, since I was 2 years old. I've been talking.
Right.
My mama said since I've been 2 years old, she said, your mouth been going since you was born.
That's how you know you were called, though. You're
That's
really.
and that's my answer for the people who think I've turned my back on God. I have not. If you believed I was called when I was Apostle Vanessa, if you believed that I was called when I was Pastor Vanessa, if you believed I was called as Minister Vanessa, then you must believe that I'm still called.
There you go.
It's a calling.
There you go.
And what I want people to understand is the church is an incubator. That's why I'm not against the church. We need to be in the church for a minute because I think it's a human need that we need to believe in something.
There you go.
Our brain, the way that God created our brain is very curious and we have questions.
Yeah.
And if we don't get some of these questions answered, we go crazy.
Yep.
So the church and these belief systems, again, that's why there's so many denominations. But guess what? There's 4,000 religions alone. That doesn't even have anything to do with the 44,000 denominations of Christianity. There's 4,000 religions on the earth. Why is that? Because the human mind is trying to make sense of all of the questions that it has. Why are we here? How did we get here? Is God real? What happens when I die? Do we believe in the afterlife? So we have all these questions. And so I'm no different than anybody else. I have those same questions. So it's a calling on my life to explore all these questions. And so the church for me was what I was introduced to start. If I had grown up in India, right, I would have been introduced to an entire different system of belief.
Exactly.
If I had been raised in, a remote part of Africa, I would have been taught a completely different belief system. So for me, as a woman of color who grew up in America, Christianity was ground zero for me. You got to start somewhere, y'all. You got to start this journey somewhere. So why do I talk about it now? Because I'm the same person that I was preaching at the church. You see my Facebook. I got hundreds of videos of me preaching.
Yes.
But I'm that same person today. I'm answering the call today to go to the next level of my assignment. That's all this is.
That's the key. That's the key, what she just said. She's still the same, just on a higher level now.
That's all.
Yes.
I have a level of knowledge.
There you go.
And I have a level of wisdom, y'all, that I didn't have in the church. That's the only difference.
That's the only difference. Absolutely.
I just want them to understand this. That's the only thing that makes this different about me.
Right. Right.
And the thing that hurt me about what the church did to me, because a lot of them turned their back on me. I'm like, y'all, you are proving to me that I'm right, that you're indoctrinated because I'm not talking the way that in a way that you can understand. Now you think I'm some devil. Now I'm some demon but that's because you're programmed.
Yep.
And you can only hear at a certain frequency.
You're so right about that.
The only thing.
Oh man, you're so right about that. And
People
that's
think
why
I'm
you
here because I want to be in the world sinning. Sean, I don't be out here sinning. I'm doing, in fact, I probably live a more godlier life now than ever.
than you did, right?
Than I did before. I'm at the house studying. That's how all I do is study. It wasn't about I left the church because I want to sin, because I whatever.
Right,
No,
right.
I left the church because I was mourning for the church.
Oh man, y'all, yes.
I was grieving for her. I was grieving for the people.
Yep.
And I was hurting because I couldn't help them. And I wanted to help them. And I had to go figure out, why can't I help them? So why do I go to TikTok? Because TikTok is brutal.
Oh, they are.
Whew.
Oh, I already.
TikTok is, I was already on Facebook. TikTok is brutal. But the ancestors, and I know when people hear this, they're going to say, oh, she talked to the ancestors. No, not really. But energy never dies.
Let me tell you
So
something. Let me tell you something right there. People, y'all can say what you want, but I feel the same way she does about the ancestors.
listen, energy never dies.
Never dies.
And yes, I can still connect to my ancestors, whether y'all like that or not. It just is what it
It
is. Go
is what
study.
it is. As I do too.
Go study science, because science will tell you all of us humans are energy.
Yes.
And the first law of conservation tells you the energy never dies. It can't be destroyed. It can't be created. It can only be transformed or altered. So
Oh, read y'all.
the ancestors literally told me one Saturday morning, and of course you're hearing this stuff energetically, right? You're hearing this in consciousness. You're not hearing like an audible voice.
Exactly.
Go put your story on TikTok now. I'm like, TikTok, that's for kids. I don't want to go to TikTok. I have a TikTok account.
Right.
But I went and I just made it. I put my first video up there, and I wasn't expecting anybody to even see it. But the people saw it, and I was talking about my evolution out of Christianity. So why do I talk about this? Because in my soul, I know, Sean, that there's thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people who feel exactly what I feel.
Yeah.
They feel it deep in their soul. Now, they don't have the bravery that Source has given me, maybe. Maybe they don't have the tenacity or the fearlessness that I have.
That's it.
I guess that's just the superpower that God has given me.
It is.
That's like the Harriet Tubman for religion.
Oh, it is.
But they feel what I feel. And the ancestors really made me feel like if you don't share this knowledge on a wider spectrum, that there'll be a lot of people who will suffer unnecessarily. And when you love humans the way that I do, I've always been a humanitarian. Everything I've done, even before I started my business, I was a social worker. I've always worked in social services. That's all I've ever done, because I love helping people.
Right.
All of my degrees are in human services because I love people. I did my life path, and I'm a number 9, which is the number for humanitarian. I'm a humanitarian. I love people. And when the ancestors impressed upon me that there are people on this earth who are suffering right now because of what religion did to us, because of what the slave masters did to us, will you go and share what you learned? And we'll be with you.
Oh.
And I said, okay. And that's why I do it. Do people lash out? Yes. Do I receive? I mean, I was going to read this letter today. I don't know if we have time for my email that I got. I get threatening
we're
letters.
Gonna take time for that.
I'm gonna just read a few
Please
lines
read it.
of it. I know it's very long, and it's very disturbing. But she said to me, the enemy has you exactly where he wants you. The enemy and his demons are only going to kill, steal, and destroy you in the end. She said, there's nothing good that comes from being an enemy of God. I'm so sorry for any hurt that a representative of God put you through. He was there when it happened, but because the enemy has strongholds over your mind, and you or your ancestors either knowingly or unknowingly made ungodly, evil covenants with the enemy, they have rule over your life. that hurt me so bad that another Black woman would take a school of thought that she learned from the slave masters and attack her Black sister, because this was a Black woman who said this to me, that you would open your mouth and disrespect my ancestors.
As she did.
And she did. She said, the enemy has a stronghold over your mind and your ancestors because they knowingly or unknowingly made ungodly, evil covenants.
Wow. Wow.
That is so heartbreaking to me, that this sister is operating in the colonizer's mindset.
It is. She is.
That she's doing just what the colonizers and the slave masters
What they taught
us
us.
to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is to attack your own people and tear them down.
It is. It is. But guess what the joy is about that? Not the joy that you're hurt. You're hurt because, you know, you're a humanitarian and you're doing this because you were called to do it. And you're speaking truth. Not only are you speaking truth, you're speaking facts that I'm pretty sure she has not taken the time to educate herself with your teachings. So that's why she doesn't understand them. Secondly, the reason that it's not going to touch you is because you know what you're doing, you're called to do. It just hurts you, like you said, that another sister, because that's one we lost for the moment.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to come back for you because you're not right.
Yeah.
You know, you're not right.
Sean, I can't tell you how many people that have come back and said, I'm sorry, Vanessa.
Yeah.
I'm not even, no cap. Like, I've gotten so many messages from people who say, I owe you an apology. One man on TikTok did an apology video to me, to the world. I don't know if you saw it yet.
I like that. I didn't see it yet.
So many people have apologized, and I understand, and they're welcome to come back into the fold with me, because
That's
I get
key.
it.
Yep.
They lack, and you said something so critical. And that's the thing that I try to remind myself of when I get these kind of messages like this. I know something, you know something that they simply don't know.
Exactly.
And that's what keeps me from breaking down, because I know that they don't understand what they're saying to me.
They don't. They really don't, because even, you know, the words that she used, it's just not right. You know, it's not right, and it's not what you're doing. It's not what you're teaching. And again, education is a big thing, to educate yourself.
Educate.
Yeah, to educate yourself and think outside of what we were indoctrinated to believe. And that's what you're doing. But, you know, you already know we can't save them all.
We can't save them all.
You can't.
I'm okay.
And that doesn't stop your work, your positive love that's being spewed out here. Because here you go, you got another one on your team right here.
I'm so glad. I need you.
Oh, yeah. And I need you as well. I'm sitting here saying I'm going to learn a lot from you, because I don't plan on going nowhere. You stuck with me.
I'm glad. Stay right here with me, because I need the support, because this is the hardest thing I've done in my entire life. I thought pastoring was hard.
Right.
Pastoring is a piece of cake. A Black woman in America speaking out against Christianity and the church and religion is not for the faint at heart.
Oh, it's not. But see, I think with you already knew what you were going to be up against, because you too were one of them.
Yes.
You always questioned, but you still were indoctrinated at one point in time in your life. So you knew you were going to get backlash, but you also know that it's not about you. It's deeper than you. And again, when you're really called, there's nothing that can stand in the way of a calling. Nobody can touch it, because your ancestors got your back. Our ancestors got your back.
And I heard it today when I went outside. I went on the porch today after I read that email. I was just, I got a little bit shaken, and I could literally feel the ancestors. They was like, "We got you. No harm is going to come your way. And my life will not end until my assignment here is complete. And nobody has the power to steal, kill, or destroy anything within my life. Not even her words." But I did have to kind of send those words back to the sender. I had to.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean,
I can't.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, you had to. Now that's human nature. We got to do that. You know, you're still human. But I do agree with you. You know, the ancestors got your back, and there's nothing that can stop the force that's happening. You know, it's just in you, and they're not going to let go until the job is done, and then you'll pass the torch on to the next person. But as you said, you alluded to that earlier as far as Harriet Tubman, you're her in a different form. You
Yep.
know, somebody gotta stand up and be on the cross, nail me to the cross, because I'm here to speak it.
Woo, girl, stop it, because I heard that too. And
Absolutely.
look, let me say this is my last thing but I'm telling you, I know a lot of things were added to the Jesus story, but I think in the Jesus story, there is some beauty there if we look at it.
Mhm.
And the ancestors and the consciousness of Christ even said to me, this is why you were so infatuated with the Jesus stories when you were a preacher.
Yeah, because you said that earlier, y'all. She said that earlier.
I
She preached off of the New Testament for the.
I was a New Testament preacher and
Yeah.
specifically a gospel preacher. And so the consciousness of Christ even spoke that to me. Like I've literally taken on even the mantle of Jesus. You have too with the work that you do. Like we are literally being crucified
Yep.
for
Yep.
the world to see.
And I don't
When
mind.
you
Yeah.
this is what happened to Jesus. If you go read the story of Jesus,
Yeah.
Jesus was coming against the Pharisees.
Yes, he was.
He was coming against
Stop
this
it.
the spirit of religion, and they crucified him for it. And so we're being crucified too.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I don't
And,
mind it. I'll take it. To
and
stand
it's
with
okay.
my truth,
We should-
it is. It's okay. And nobody's saying it don't bother you because you're human. But
Yep.
that's not gonna stop it. That's not
Not,
gonna stop what's meant to happen. It's
and
not.
you see that when he was resurrected, because what they're trying to show us, whether he physically resurrected or not, what that story is trying to show us is you can't stop the work. Because
Yes.
they thought they had crucified Jesus.
Yes.
But what did he do? He still resurrected. He still got
Yeah,
about the grave.
that's right.
In other words, you
That's so
can't
true.
stop the work. You can't stop the work, y'all.
You can.
It's
You
gonna
can.
go on.
It's so true. It's so true. Woo! You got a lot more
Mm-mm.
to do. And before I let you go for the afternoon, I have one last question that I already know is going to be a yes, but I ask everybody the same question.
Okay.
Will you promise me to continue spreading peace and love in this world?
Yes. I
And I
promise.
thank you.
I
And
promise.
before I go again, I'm going to say it one more time. I probably said it about 4 times already. Do not ever stop doing what you're doing. Please. You're needed out here. Our people need you, and you're being heard. And I love you, and I love what you're doing and who you represent.
Thank you.